The Keddie murders are an unsolved 1981 quadruple homicide in Keddie, California, a rural resort town in the Sierra Nevada. The victims were Glenna Susan Sue Sharpney Davis, born March 29, 1945, daughter Tina Lynn Sharp, born July 22, 1968, her son, John Stephen Sharp, born November 16, 1965, and John's friend, Dana Hall Wingate, born February 8, 1964. The murders took place in cabin 28 of the Keddie Resort during the late evening of April 11, 1981, or early the following morning, and the bodies of Sue, John, and Dana were found on the morning of April 12 by Sue's 14-year-old daughter, Sheila, who had been sleeping at a friend's house. Sue's two younger sons, Rick and Greg, as well as their friend Justin Smart, were also in the house, but were unharmed. Tina was missing from the scene. Tina remained a missing person until April 1984, when her skull and several other bones were recovered at Camp 18, California, near Feather Falls in Butte County. Multiple leads and suspects were examined in the intervening years, though no charges were filed. Subsequent sheriffs in Plumas County would state that the initial investigation was disorganized and poorly conducted, resulting in the overlooking of crucial evidence. Several new leads have been announced in the 21st century, including the discovery of a hammer in a pond in 2016, as well as announcements regarding the discovery of new DNA evidence. The Keddie murders have received national media attention, including coverage in People magazine, an investigation discovery documentary series, a BuzzFeed Unsolved episode, and an independent 2008 feature documentary titled Cabin 28. Renewed public interest in the case was sparked in part by the release of the 2008 horror film The Strangers, which various internet bloggers theorized was inspired by the Keddie murders. Despite slight similarities, the film made no such claims to having been based on the crimes. In the fall of 1980, Glenna Susan Sue Sharpney Davis, born March 29, 1945, in Springfield, Massachusetts, along with her 5 children, left her home in Connecticut after separating from her abusive husband, James Sharp. She decided to relocate to Northern California, where her brother Don was residing at the time. Upon arriving in California, she began renting cabin 28 at the Keddie Resort in the rural Sierra Nevada community of Keddie. There, she resided with her 15-year-old son, John, 14-year-old daughter Sheila, 12-year-old daughter Tina, and 2 younger sons, Rick age 10, and Greg age 5. On April 11, 1981, around 1:30 p.m., Sue and Sheila drove from Keddie to pick up John and his friend Dana Hall Wingate from Gansner Park in Quincy, California, and brought them back to Keddie, about 5 miles (8.0 km) away. 2 hours later, around 3:30 p.m., John and Dana hitchhiked back to Quincy, where they may have had plans to visit friends. Around this time, the two were seen in the city's downtown area. A local woman, Donna Williams, claimed to have picked them up in front of a tire store and given them a ride down the road to another friend's home. The two were later seen attending a party at Oakland Camp in Quincy. That same evening, Sheila had plans to spend the night with the Seabolt family, who lived in an adjacent cabin, while Sue remained at home with Rick, Greg, and the boys' young friend, Justin Smart. Sheila departed cabin 28 shortly after 8:00 p.m., leaving her mother alone with the younger children. Tina, who had been watching television at the Seabolts, returned home to cabin 28 around 9:30 p.m. after Sheila arrived at the Seabolts to spend the night. Around 7:00 a.m. in the morning of April 12, Sheila returned to cabin 28 and discovered the dead bodies of Sue, John, and Dana in the cabin's living room. All 3 had been bound with adhesive tape and wire. Tina was absent from the home, while the 3 younger children Rick, Greg, and Justin were unharmed in an adjacent bedroom. Initial reports stated that the 3 young boys had slept through the incident, though this was later contradicted. Upon discovering the scene, Sheila rushed back to the Seabolts' cabin, whereupon James Seabolt retrieved Rick, Greg, and Justin through the bedroom window. He later admitted to having briefly entered the cabin through the back door to see if anyone was still alive, potentially contaminating evidence in the process. The murders of Sue, John, and Dana were notably vicious. 2 bloodied knives and 1 hammer were found at the scene, and one of the knives, a steak knife later determined to have been used in the murders, had been bent in half due to extreme force. Blood spatter evidence from inside the house indicated that the murders of Sue, John, and Dana had all taken place in the living room. Sue was discovered lying on her side near the living room sofa, nude from the waist down and gagged with a blue bandana, and her own panties, which had been secured with tape. She had been stabbed in the chest, her throat was slashed, and on the side of her head was an imprint matching the butt of a Daisy 880 BB gun. John's throat was slashed. Dana had multiple head injuries and had been manually strangled. All three had blunt force trauma to their heads, caused by a hammer or hammers. Autopsies determined that they died from the knife wounds and blunt force trauma. Sheila and the Seabolt family, with whom Sheila had spent the night in the neighboring cabin, heard no commotion during the night. A couple living nearby were awakened around 1:30 a.m. by what sounded like muffled screaming, but couldn't say where from. Tina's jacket, shoes, and a showbox containing various tools were missing from the cabin, which showed no indication of forced entry. An unidentified fingerprint was found on a handrail on the stairs leading to the cabin's back door. The cabin's telephone had been left off the hook, its lights were off, and the drapes were closed. Suspects interviewed included a man who disappeared from Keddie shortly after the murders and was later found in Oregon. After submitting to a polygraph examination, the suspect was cleared. One of the Sharps' neighbors, Marilyn Smart, mother of Justin, later claimed she had found a bloody jacket belonging to Tina in her basement and had turned it in to police, though no official record of this exists. Her husband, Martin Smart, also claimed that a claw hammer had inexplicably gone missing from his home. Plumas County Sheriff Doug Thomas, who presided over the case, later stated that Martin had provided endless clues in the case that seemed to throw the suspicion away from him. In addition to interviewing the Smarts, detectives interviewed numerous other locals and neighbors. Several, including members of the Seabolt family, recalled seeing an unknown green van parked at the Sharps' cabin around 9:00 p.m. Others recalled noticing a brown Datsun parked at the residence that evening, which appeared to have a tire that was going flat. Original composite sketches of two suspects based on testimony from Justin, who claimed to have witnessed the crimes. Justin gave conflicting stories of the evening, including that he had dreamt details of the murders, though he later claimed to have actually witnessed them. In his latter account of events, told under hypnosis, he claimed to have heard sounds coming from the living room while watching television in the bedroom with Rick and Greg. Investigating these sounds, he saw Sue with two men, one with a mustache and short hair, the other clean-shaven with long hair. Both wore glasses. According to Justin, John and Dana then entered the home and began heatedly arguing with the men. A fight ensued, after which Tina entered the room, and was taken out of the cabin's back door by one of the men. Based on Justin's descriptions, composite sketches of the two unknown men were produced by forensic artist Harlan Embry. In press releases accompanying the sketches, the suspects were described as being in their late 20s to early 30s. One stood between 5 feet 11 inches 1.80 meters, 6 feet 2 inches 1.88 meters tall with dark blonde hair, and the other between 5 feet 6 inches 1.68 meters and 5 feet 10 inches 1.78 meters with black, greased hair. Both wore gold-framed sunglasses. Rumors regarding the crimes being ritualistic or motivated by drug trafficking were dismissed by Plumas County Sheriff Doug Thomas, who stated in the week following the murders that no drug paraphernalia or illegal drugs were found in the home. Carla McCullen, a family acquaintance, later told detectives that Dana Wingate had recently stolen an unknown quantity of LSD from local drug dealers, though she was unable to provide proof of this claim. About 4,000 man-hours were spent working the case, which Thomas described as frustrating. In December 1983, detectives ruled out serial killers, Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole, as potential suspects. Because Tina was believed to have been abducted from the crime scene, her disappearance was initially investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI), though it was reported on April 29, 1981 that the FBI had backed off the search as the Department of Justice was doing an adequate job and made the FBI's presence unnecessary. A grid-pattern search of the area, covering a 5-mile (8.0-kilometer) radius around the cabin was conducted with police canines, but the efforts were fruitless. On April 22, 1984, 3 years and 11 days after the murders and Tina's disappearance, a bottle collector discovered a cranium portion of a human skull and part of a mandible at Camp 18 near Feather Falls in neighboring Butte County, a distance of roughly 100 miles (160 kilometers) from Keddie. Shortly after announcing the discovery, Butte County Sheriff's Office received an anonymous call that identified the remains as belonging to Tina, but the call was not documented in the case. A recording of this call was found at the bottom of an evidence box at some point after 2013, by a deputy who was assigned the case. The remains were confirmed by a forensic pathologist to be those of Tina Sharp in June 1984. Near the remains, detectives also discovered a blue nylon jacket, a blanket, a pair of Levi Strauss jeans with a missing back pocket, and an empty surgical tape dispenser.